Part 2 of the Delage trunk lid repair. I'm going to show you some tips on how to repair vintage trunk hinges. This is the Delage trunk lid for the right side. It's got a hinge pin in the center there, and it's got studs on each end. Actually, they're bolts. They should be studs. It's also missing a bolt here. So we're going to show you how to fix this. This is the left side, similar thing, not very good shape. This bolt's the threads are all stripped. And it should not be bolts, it should be studs. So we're going to have to fix this. We'll show you how. First thing we want to see is what kind of material it is. In this case, it's brass or bronze. Quite often they were made back in the 30s with that material. Sometimes they're cast steel, sometimes they're pot metal, white metal. I've seen them even in aluminum. So you got to know what you're working with, because sometimes you got to heat studs. You got to know how much temperature to get them out. Sometimes they're soldered in rather than threaded in, and you have to melt out the solder. So in order to approach each one, you got to know first the material. If it's not peeled off like this, sand off a spot so you know. You also have to know right from left, because sometimes they're curved to the shape of the trunk lid. And they don't always, and the studs don't always match their distances. It depends how they made them. In this case, it's marked with a V as the right and the G is the left. So it's not going to be too hard to figure out. If you don't have that, mark them. Also keep track. This part here with a hinge goes on the trunk lid, and this one goes on the parcel shelf. Write it down put some notes. Okay, we also run into different bolt sizes. This one's 5/16 now because somebody retapped a 1/4 inch hole. The other one here is a 1/4 inch. The small holes here as well are 1/4 inch. Over here we got 5/16. They probably got tapped out at some time. That's why we don't have studs. We got bolts. We have a stud here on the end, but it's stripped. So we're going to have to pull that out and put another stud in. This one over here, the 1/4 inch, is also stripped. To get this one out, I get 2 wrenches, tighten up 2 nuts, tighten them together, hit the bottom nut, and you can turn it out. If not, you can do it with a pair of vice grips. I always try to save the studs if I can, because you never know if you have a problem and still need them. Sometimes they're soldered in, not in this case, but if they are, you have to melt them out carefully. Make sure you know what metal and what temperature to melt them out at so you don't damage the hinge itself, because some of them, like in this case, are irreplaceable. The welder supply will also tell you which solder to use, because there's various forms. I like Sodell. Some of the different ones work better with different materials. So make sure you get a solder that has a lower melting point than the material you're working on. This is a handy tool to check for bolt sizes. Strange on this one, it's American bolts on a 37 French car, but we'll go with what it is. There's 5/16 on the large one, 1/4 inch on the small. Another handy tool comes in SAE or metric. It'll tell you what thread you need for your bolts. Especially, I need to have the right ones in the hinge. I don't want to strip them. So I'm going to check the bolts that I took out, make sure that they have the right thread. The large ones are 5/16, 18 threads per inch, and the 1/4 inch are 20 threads per inch. So it's a handy tool. So I've picked up some 5/16 threaded rod so I can cut the lengths I like, because the bolts they had didn't fit right. They were too short of anything. So I've made longer ones for the studs. I measure out the length I need. In this case, it was 2 inches. And what I do is I cut it off really square with a die cutter. I like to use a die cutter, but you can use a grinding stone or whatever you want to use to cut it, hacksaw. I put it up against it here on the die cutter, go slowly, and I just make it sure it's nice and square. It doesn't have any points or it's not weird looking on both sides. Then I take the die cutter and I just run it slowly, and I bring this in at a 45 degrees and just roll it over top. You can use it on a grinding stone too, or on a grinding disc, depends. I like this, it's very fine. It does a nice job. Usually I can thread on the nut right away. If you have a problem, you can use a die as well. All depends what you want. And then you make sure the nuts go on easy. This method usually goes real easy. I've done it so many times. I find I have to do that on a lot of cars where they get stripped out, especially antique cars. Here we are with new studs. That's going to be a big help. Also, this gets bolted to the parcel shelf first. This will tilt up, and there you can put down the trunk lid and you can Tilt this back down and you're not going to damage a paint job because usually you got the trunk off to paint it. So this is going to save a lot of trouble. Also, a good plater will put cardboard tubes. They got tubes especially for bolts so that they don't damage the threads. If you don't have the studs in, I've seen some guys, they fill all the threads in there with chrome and you're screwed. So make sure you put the studs in, and it's up, and tell the chromer not to damage the threads and not to take them out during the process. Also, if the hinge pins are worn, they have to be drilled out and an oversized pin put in. I usually let a machine shop do that. They're better equipped than me for that. I don't want it screwed up. In the next video, I'll show you how to make the rubber gaskets for the hinges. Please like and subscribe.